Right, hello everybody, so sorry. I missed the thing for a moment saying we were live. So hi, I'm Kim and I run Darn workshops. I do all different creative workshops all over the country and I've been doing loads of online sessions, but this is my first one with the virtual village hall. So I'm incredibly excited because I've been doing so many incredible things and I hope you'll enjoy tap dancing this morning because that looked incredible. So today we're doing something completely different. We're going to be making some party decorations out of paper. So I know there's a big theme this week of tea parties, like vintage tea parties specifically. So we're going to be making some gorgeous decorations. So if I move a little bit to this direction, you can see all of these big paper pom-poms up here. So you can do it in all different sorts of sizes. They're a really great way to fill a space. There's also one over this side, if I just reach for it. And this one is made out of wallpaper, so it's a completely different style again. So we've got a few different techniques I'll show you. So this is just a half-an-hour session, but if we run over a little bit, that is no problem. So first one we'll be making is going to look something like this. So this one is a kind of half one, but we're going to do some that are a bit more circular so that they can kind of float from washing lines and stuff and just look absolutely gorgeous. So for this one, you're going to need paper, so all different colours work. You can do it in more than one colour as well. I quite like sticking to one colour though. And some kind of either twine, string, even wire, and some scissors. So what I'll do now is I'll turn around my camera. It might take just a little second for it to click into the other one, and I'll show you what I'm doing with my hands. So, ooh, wrong one, sorry. There we go, so that should switch in one moment. Earlier it did do this where it swapped onto the other one, so fingers crossed it does go onto my back camera in a second. But what works is many techniques as can in time. There we go, it's doing it. Fantastic. So what you're going to need is 16 sheets of tissue paper. So I get mine from YPO, so if there's any teachers out there, then you'll know of YPO and how amazing they are for this kind of stuff, so you can get loads of colours. So I've cut mine at 50 centimetres by 40 centimetres, so you need a good rectangle. Let's zoom that up a little bit. And I'd normally do this where it was 100 centimetres by 80 centimetres, so a whole massive sheet of one of these. But doing that on camera is a little bit of a nightmare, so I've cut them in half. Plus, with one of those rolls, you only get 8 sheets of each. So to have a massive thing, you need slightly smaller ones or 2 big things full. So we're going to concertina this, make it into like an accordion shape. And I find this is one of those things that a lot of people have done in their childhood to make fans. So you'll probably start doing it and realise that it's a very familiar technique that you've not done in a long time. So I'm doing this at about 2.5 centimetres. So you do one and then you fold over and then you keep doing that. So just keep flipping it over and folding it in half. Oh, and I can already see people are tuning in and commenting. So thank you so much. That is very much appreciated. So just keep flipping it over, and it doesn't matter too much if you've got uneven bits here. So we're going to sort them all out afterwards. So it does get a little bit thick and hard to manage. So as you're folding, try and make sure they're all the same width as much as possible. And you're going to end up with something incredibly chunky. So you don't have to do these as massive ones, you can do them as small things as well. So I've got a bit of overlap here. So I'm just going to fold that back. And it does get to a point where it is a bit hard to manage. And then I'm going to fold this in half. So it can be quite hard in the middle point, but just squish it down as much as possible. So then when you've got your middle, get some string or some wire and tie it around it. I'm going to try and do a really good solid knot. And you want the knot to be on this bit rather than in the fold, because it just hangs a little bit better that way. And just pull it really, really tight. And if you fold it over, you can always do another on the other side. And this should be quite well hidden afterwards. So then squish it down again as much as you possibly can. And then it's completely up to you how you cut this. So what we want is, if we unfolded it like this, you get really square edges and it looks really strange. Whereas if you cut a nice curve into it, you get this nice frothy, kind of almost like a peony type effect, where it just looks really rounded and nice and just pom-pom like and squishy. Another thing you can do, this is a smaller version. If you cut them into kind of points, you get something that's a bit more like a dahlia and just a bit spikier. So this bit can always be quite tricky because it's so much to cut through. So I'd recommend doing it really slowly. And if you can, separate some of it out so you're only doing it a little bit at a time. And it's best to do this with scissors. I've had people ask before if you can do this with a craft knife, but tissue paper and a craft knife is a bit of a nightmare. And it just rips. So we're just going to cut this into as neat a circle as possible and just discard those extra bits. So one of my favourite things to do with these little bits of tissue paper that are left over is, if you put them on paper and drop water on them, the colour seeps out and get really interesting techniques and patterns. It's a really fun one to do with kids. So we've got all of these raggedy bits here, so just a few at a time. I'm going to cut through them and make it into a nice circle. And one thing that can help if you're struggling is to just cut a tiny little slit down each of these sections. And these are amazing for kind of like weddings, events, tea parties, all sorts. I used to do creative workshops for my local, I used to just do all the kind of crafty things for my local WI. And we had quite a few events where we just covered spaces in these just because they were so much fun to make. So as you can see, it does take a bit of time and patience to chop through all of them. And there's absolutely no need to rush it. And if you get any bits that look a little bit odd, you can always just trim them down afterwards. And you'll sometimes get little bits like this, where the fold lines haven't quite matched up, so you end up with a slightly square bit. So when you get to one of those, just round that off a little bit, because we don't want any sharp angles in this. We want it to all be really nice and soft and rounded. And you can do them in any colour scheme you like. And like I said, I got my tissue paper from Wappio. But if anyone is near a country basket, I know there's one in Leeds. I think that there's a few other places around the country, like I think there's one in Lancashire. You can get massive reams of different colours of tissue paper, so that's where I used to get them all from. And they do a really lovely range of colours as well. So any bits like this where it's slightly spiky, slightly uneven, just neat it all up a little bit. But it doesn't matter if they're a little bit different in height. So we've got one side done, other than this little bit here. Like I say, you can always tidy bits up later. And then for the other side, so we'll get into the fun bit soon, I promise. This is the bit that takes a little bit of patience, but then after that, you can zoom through it. And if you do it with just 8 sheets rather than 16, it's a little bit simpler as well, but you only get half of a paper pom-pom. So I'm just going to round these off in the same way. But like I said, you could always do them as spikes if you want more of a kind of pointy dahlia effect. But I quite like the kind of round paper pom-pom look. So where have we got people watching from today? I always love knowing where people are watching from, because I've done quite a lot of Facebook Lives over the last year. And there was a phase when I was just getting so many people watching from all over the world. We had loads of Americans watching, quite a few people from the Philippines. So I don't know how that happened, but it always fascinates me, because then you learn the different words for all of the different craft materials. I was having to say to people, oh, could I get an American translator to tell me what this material is called over there, just for things like burlap and hessian, and there's slight differences. So these end up looking quite rustic in the end anyway, so it doesn't matter too much if you have a few little square edges. And this is a lovely craft to do out in the sunshine as well, surrounded by flowers, because it is so warm at the moment. Perfect summer day craft. There we go. Oh, we've got some Pauline watching from Southampton. That's fab. My parents are very nearby. It's such a lovely place. So we're just going to round that one off. And I normally find my first side is always a little bit neater, and then I start doing the second one and I kind of rush through it. There we go. So just going to get those scrap bits out of the way. So then you can fold it out. If I zoom out a little bit again. So then what we're going to do is one bit at a time, we're going to peel it up. And on your first one, you want to try and pull it up as high as it will possibly go, because if not, you get kind of a bit of a gap in the middle there. And I would do kind of each side one at a time. I say that, I know I just repeated that side. So this bit here, there's a bit of a spike to it, so I'm just going to round that off. There we go. And then keep swapping over. Oh, we've got Lynn watching from Morecambe. Oh, I wish I was that close to the sea. Fiona in Nottingham, Adrienne in South Wales, and Pam in Newcastle upon Tyne. Newcastle is one of my favourite places to run workshops. I've not done it for a while, so I used to do them at the biscuit factory, but it's been tricky to do things further away from home at the moment. I'm based in Huddersfield. Oh, and Anne watching from Suffolk. Oh, bet that is lovely at the moment. So you can see it becomes this really gorgeous, chunky, puffy thing. So you can always, if you want to, flip it over and do the other side, but I think it's easier to kind of do it half and half. I wouldn't worry too much about being too precious about not crushing the bits of tissue paper, because they do get a bit crushed over time, well, as you work with them anyway. And that's kind of part of the joy of it. And you can do this with pattern paper as well. Like, you need quite a lot of it. But it's something that, I don't know about all of you, but if you're a crafty person, you often get given things. And one of the things I get given a lot of is old patterns. And making, especially a smaller one of these with old patterns, looks absolutely gorgeous. So as you get to this bit, I would recommend just being really, really careful as you pull it out, because this is the point when sometimes it will start to rip a little bit. So now I'm going to turn it over, and it's not quite halfway done. I'm just going to lift this bit up. Oh, and Sophia's saying she lives in Hamlet on the outskirts of Farnham in Surrey. I grew up in Woking, so I'm very familiar with the area. Farnham is gorgeous though, isn't it? It's like a leafier Surrey, but leafier Woking even. Just doing them all one at a time, very gently, no need to rush it. And what is everyone's favourite craft to do in hot weather? You don't really want to do anything kind of squishy and fluffy in this weather, which sounds daft. So this is a really good one as well, especially if you're doing it for like a big party or a big event, getting your friends involved and asking them all over and saying, can I have a nice glass of something to and make loads of these. I used to work at a wedding station quite a while ago before I started doing workshops full time. And we had a few days where to decorate our stalls for wedding fairs, let's just chop that bit down. The whole office would just make a load of these and I'd kind of show everyone how to do them. It was always a really fun time. And did anyone do the tap dancing earlier? Because I caught some of it, and I've not done any tap dancing since I was a teenager. It's so much fun, it made me wish I still had my tap shoes. So after a while, you kind of have to turn it over, because it does start to, especially when you do a full one like this, it can get very, very full very quickly. And you end up sometimes to compress this a little bit. But you can always do them so they're a little bit further apart as well. So if you wanted one that wasn't quite this dense, you could always do kind of 12 sheets instead of 18. And like I said, if you wanted to do a half one, you could just do 8 sheets. And it does sometimes get to a bit of a point where it can be tricky to pull these up because they've got less space to move. And sometimes these middle bits end up getting a little bit denser and a bit more stuck together. So has anyone got any lovely sunny day plans? I've got a workshop on an allotment later, and I've got this gorgeous shelter that you work under as we're making things. And I can imagine that in the evening after a really, really hot day is going to be so lovely. Oh, Pauline says, this is so satisfying. I'm so glad. It is one of those things that, like, I'm doing it, it's so relaxing. keep having to remind myself to chat to all of you so that I'm not just getting really into the zone with making it. And remember to turn it over as well so that you don't just end up doing one half of it, which I often find myself doing. So I'm aware that we're on 20 minutes. So would people prefer that I keep showing you how to do the whole of this thing so you can see what it looks like in the end? Or have you got the idea and would you like me to go on to another technique so I can show you as many things as possible? Because I am aware that pulling each and every layer up does take a while. Let me stop if this happens. I was just looking at the chat for a moment, and that's when I went. So we've had 2 people ask for another technique instead, so that's perfect. So basically, you would just keep doing what I've been doing, and eventually it would end up looking a bit more like this one. So this one is a little bit denser than this. So, but that one is 8 sheets, and it's just a half one. So you can always adjust as you like. So you can always as well do a much smaller version. So these are both, I believe it was 12 sheets of each, and they were about, I think it was 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters, and just the exact same technique, but instead of wrapping some twine around, you wrap a bit of wire around the middle. And then I've just put a little leaf on, which you don't have to do. And you can always do it this way, but what you can do instead is like this one. So this is the technique I'm about to show you. You could always combine the two, where when you put the wire on, you put a little button on it, so that then you don't pull them all the way up to the top, but it's got a little button hiding in the middle. Fab, everyone is requesting other techniques, so that is good by me. So this is a really nice one, just for doing some really big, chunky, like space fillers. And they look a little bit like, I don't know, pinwheels or something. Oh, so Paul has said, can you see the back of the half one? So yes, the half one looks like this. So it's just really nice and flat. So if you're covering a wall and you didn't want something that was floating, this would be a really good way just to kind of clip it to a wall, and it would look really lovely. And I've done that before as well. And you can always have a combination of kind of floating ones and ones that are statically stuck to something. If anyone owns a shop or anything, it's also a really nice way to fill space. So this one I've done with wallpaper, and again you can do this one on a smaller scale. So this one was done on a small scale with some map pages, and I've got another one over here that kind of unclipped itself a little bit, but this one's just done with some marbled paper because I do a lot of marbling and bookbinding as well. So Pauline says it's a really good idea for a wall or door, and definitely. So again, we're going to be doing a bit of concertinaing here, and I've got a piece of wallpaper pre-cut. So it's just, again, a big rectangle. So if you're going into IKEA anytime soon, not IKEA, B&Q, you can always get a little sample of wallpaper and use it for this. So we're going to fold these a little bit bigger than we did the last one. So I'm just going to turn it over a bit. There we go. So this one I would fold at about 3 centimeters. I think that's 3 or 4. Let's double check just so I'm telling you the right thing, because a lot of these things I just do by eye. Yeah, 4 centimeters. So this will be for a giant one. If you're doing a small one, you'd do a really small fold. And then we're going to do the exact same thing of folding back and forth. But with this, you want to make sure that as you're folding it, it's much more even. So you want to be a bit more exact with it. And with it being wallpaper, it's a really nice kind of structure, so it keeps it shaped really well. So you could do it with thinner paper as well, but I just tend to find it doesn't look as good and kind of bold and sculpted. So good way for using up little bits of wallpaper ends as well if you've been doing some DIY over the last year. And I love doing small ones of these with book pages and putting buttons in the middle of them. And again, they're quite nice as kind of table decorations for some vintage tea parties. So with this bit, once I get to the end, because there's not quite enough to fold it all the way, instead of just folding it, I'm just going to trim this across so it's the same width. So if you've got a really heavy duty stapler, I would recommend giving it a really good staple in the middle, but my one isn't that sturdy. So instead I'm going to fold it in half, find that middle point, and then get another piece of twine. But you could always use kind of wire for this as well if you prefer. So I'm just going to leave a bit of tail at the back, because then you can always use that to tie it onto something. And then turn it over. You can already kind of see what it's going to end up looking like. So to start with, we're just going to staple these together, but from the back. So just a couple of staples. And you can do this with double-sided sticky tape, but I just find it does unstick eventually. And I've not done a staple right at the top because sometimes if it doesn't quite stretch at the other side, which it's not going to here, then what you do, I thought I cut a good rectangle for this before, but maybe not. So if that happens, it doesn't quite reach around, literally just take a bit off. So I'm being quite generous in what I'm taking off here, just so that you don't have to watch me do it again if it's not quite right. And you can do two of these and put them together so it's a bit fuller and you've got some more pleats. But now that should, there we go, so it's going to stretch around, so you can see there's a difference there. That's okay, because I'm going to trim that down. So then a few more staples over here. So we want to do one here as close to the middle as possible so we don't end up with a big kind of gaping gap. And then two more. I'm going to cut that side down just so it's nice and evened out. Pauline says, great to see the adjusting, and I'm glad to hear that, because that's the thing with this one. There isn't kind of an exact size to cut it to, so it's always good to kind of just do it as you go. So with this one, because we've got two kind of folded sides to the middle rather than them folding in like that, then I'm just going to fold those down there just so that we don't see any of the white poking through. Like that. And then if you're not too bothered about seeing staplers on top, you can staple that together, or you can run a line of glue down it and glue it together. But I'm not so bothered because I always think these things are going to be seen from a distance. And this bit here doesn't matter so much because you don't have to put another one on top. But I always think it looks quite nice if you have two of them on top of each other like that other one I had. So like this combination. So I'll show you how to do that other one. So I've got a bit here which is probably going to be much too big for this now to cut it down. So what I'm going to do is just cut this into a much smaller rectangle. And because it's in a tube, cut it that way so I don't have to unfold it too much. And then I'm going to create a nice fold along there and cut along that. And you could layer like 3 or 4 of them up as well, or get it smaller as you go. So then exact same, but we're going to do this a little bit smaller, so kind of just over 1 centimetre, because this one's going to be a bit more of a delicate one. So I would love to see photos of any of these that people make at home as well. So if you are doing it at home, you can always drop me a message at Darn It Workshops and show me what you're doing, or send them to the actual visual. I'm sure they would love to see them as well. So with this one, I'm going to tie some twine round, and I'm going to leave some lengths so that I can feed it through these bits. I'm just going to trim that bit off. And then same again, so fold it in half. I get a longer piece of twine than that. So this is definitely a long piece of twine. But better to have too much rather than too little. I'm going to do a good double knot in it. Then we're going to do the same thing again. Ooh, that staple went a bit dodgy, so that might look a bit weird, but it'll be okay. You want to try and get as far to the bottom as possible, because you can see what's happened here. It's kind of gone a little bit AWOL. So what I might do is, yeah, just break that off and restaple it again. Because if not, I'm going to keep looking at it, being at it. And then, is it going to stretch? Nearly. We're just going to have to take a small bit off that. I thought I'd cut that one to the right size, but there we go. So you don't need to take as much off. It's a lot smaller, and it was very nearly there. And this is a good one as well if you're in like any local free cycle groups and you want to make a load. Just pop up a post saying, does anyone have any old reels of wallpaper that I can have? Because I don't know about you, but my local Huddersfield one is so good for things like that. Oh, thank you so much, Pauline. I hope you have a nice time with your friend. And Pauline said I've given her a great idea for a Christmas door decoration, so I would love to see that when you eventually do it. So then, with this one, you're going to pop it on top. And there should be enough of a gap there that you can feed it through. But if you're struggling with it, if you have a bucket or a plastic needle like this, which I use for lots of kind of weaving and lots of crafts, then you can use that to stitch through. And like, I would have been able to push it through eventually, but why not make your life easier? And then the same on the other side. And then that just anchors it down really, really nicely. then you can tie all of these cords together. Have I pulled that? No, that's worked well. So you want to pull it tight enough that it ties, but you don't want to rip anything. But with it being wallpaper, it would be quite good. And then you've got a lovely sculptural decoration. You can do loads of these in different wallpapers, and you can do it in much smaller things as well. Although I'd recommend, if you're doing smaller ones like this, I would do it in a much lighter weight paper or a really lightweight card, just because I found if you do it with wallpaper on a small scale, it's just impossible to work with. And like, this is quite heavy card, which works quite nicely because you get lots of speed. So this is one where, rather than doing it all in one, I've done 2 different rectangles and then stuck them together. So that just means that you get a slightly denser pleat rather than being a little bit further apart like that. And I think that is everything for today. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. It's been lovely to do a session with a virtual village hall for the first time. So I hope you all have a really, really lovely day. Enjoy the sunshine, and please do show me any of these that you make. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things. So you can always drop me a message with pictures of what you made, any questions you have afterwards as well. So please do take care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.